Bone broth has this amazing reputation of being a superfood. Many natural healthcare practitioners all over the world recommend it for its healing benefits. However, there are some studies that suggest there could be a problem with drinking bone broth and a downside. So I'm going to show you the benefits and also how to mitigate the risk of drinking bone broth. But before we get started, I'm Dr. Nick Zarowski, and if you love the show and you love taking care of your health naturally, then you're going to want to join me in my private natural health community called Health Club. I'll put a link in the description below, but in Health Club, I teach you all the tips and tactics and tricks that I utilize in my clinic in order to keep you on the razor's edge of natural health. So if you love natural health and you want to really have some momentum in 2025, with your overall health and well-being, click on the link in the description and join Health Club today. Now let's go ahead and jump into this topic of bone broth. First, what is bone broth? Bone broth is very different than your traditional broth. The bone broth is going to be made with bones and also typically some skin and the ligaments and things of that from the animal. I'll give you an example. In my house, we like to roast a chicken. After we go and have a chicken dinner, we take the leftovers of the chicken and we put it all into a big pot, and then we make a bone broth with it. Now, this is very different from typical broth, which is typically just made with some meat and vegetables and a lot of different spices. So you're gonna get all the benefits of the bones, which we'll talk about in just a second. Now, I also wanna point out that bone broth has a very distinct flavor and taste that is very different than traditional broth. When made right though, it can be very delicious, and I'll share with you more at the end of this video on how to make bone broth right. And one of the reasons that you get a very distinct flavor is because of the nutrient contents of it. Let's dive into the nutrients of bone broth so that we can determine why we would actually even want to use this in the first place. Now, there was a study published in Medicine, and what they showed is that bone broth contains considerable quantities of amino acids and also proteins such as collagen. Now, for every 100 milliliters of bone broth, the research found that there was 249 milligrams of protein and 233 milligrams of amino acids and 25 milligrams of minerals. Now, the minerals that were in there in a level that was worth noting would be the minerals such as sodium, calcium, phosphorus, potassium, and also magnesium. Now, I want to point out that depending on what kind of bones you use for your bone broth, you're going to get a different nutritional profile. For example, if you use a beef bone, you're going to get more iron and zinc from it. If you use a chicken for your bone broth, you're going to end up with more of protein content. And if you're going to use a fish for your bone broth, you're going to get more iodine and omega-3 fatty acids. Now, I have never used fish in order to make bone broth. It sounds terribly nasty to me, and I don't think I'd have any interest in the smell in the process of making it or anything else. But if you have had fish bone broth, as in you have made it in your home, put in the comments below. I love to know the details of that because I'm sure it can be done well. I just don't know that I would be up to the task of doing it. So now that we determined what kind of nutrients are in the bone broth, why are they important to you? Well, these different amino acids and the collagen from bone broth is very important to the overall makeup of your body, your ligaments, your bones, everything. And about 1/3 of your body is made up of collagen. And historically, our ancestors would eat these types of proteins all the time, but they had a diet that was very different in how they would consume animal proteins and also animal connective tissue and organs and the whole deal. So they would eat amino acids such as glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline regularly, whereas today's diet hardly has any in it. Now, if we look at these different amino acids, they are going to be some of the key building blocks to your structural framework, your tendons, your ligaments, your bones. So therefore, if you want to keep your joints healthy, this is very important. There was a study that was published in the Journal of Food Science, and they found that one of the huge benefits of consuming bone broth is that especially as you age and you don't have the ability to absorb nutrients from your food as well, people were still able to actually absorb the different amino acids and collagen from bone broth very well. Also, what has been found is that those who are suffering from gastrointestinal distress and inflammation, let's say you have a colitis or something along those lines, you're also able to utilize bone broth very well, whereas you may have a hard time breaking down some of your foods. Now, if you want to get the most out of your bone broth, we have to look at the best time that you should drink it. The best time to drink bone broth is going to be first thing in the morning. So get rid of the morning coffee and drink some bone broth, okay? And I'll share with you at the end of this video a little bit of a workaround too if you're somebody who just isn't you don't have bone broth readily available to you all the time. Now, another thing that was really interesting is that in a study, they found that postmenopausal women who had struggles with their bone health were actually able to improve their bone density simply by drinking bone broth, which is really cool. Now, we're also going to find that bone broth helps reduce inflammation. There was a study in Medicina that suggested that the bone broth would help reduce inflammation, especially in those who are suffering with different inflammation that was pertaining to the gastrointestinal system. So it was really good there. There was actually a study where they took mice that had ulcerative colitis. They gave them bone broth, and they found that the bone broth was able to actually help with tissue repair and healing and decreasing inflammation as well. So that's very cool. Also, bone broth has been shown to have a bit of a neuroprotective effect. There was a study that was published in the Journal of Medicinal Food, and what they found is that the neuroprotective effect of bone broth really had more to do with inflammation and fixing the gut, which also has a huge impact on brain health. So if you want to improve your brain health, you know that you have to improve your gut health as well. And those two went really hand in hand, which was pretty interesting to see. Now, the big potential risk of drinking bone broth that everyone talks about is coming from a study in 2013. And there was a study published in Medical Hypothesis, and what they found is that there was higher amounts of lead in bone broth, simply because if you know anything about heavy metal toxicity, whenever you have an issue with lead, that lead actually likes to find its way to your bone and it gets stored and trapped in the bones. Then if you're taking bone broth and you're making that, well, you're going to let that lead out. But here's the thing, is there's ways around this. The first step to maneuvering around this issue of lead toxicity in the bones is making sure that you're getting bones that are coming from a quality source. You do not want bones that are coming from a conventional farm where, you know, the animals weren't taken care of well and they were fed terrible food. You want to make sure that you're getting bones that are coming from an animal that was pasture raised, organic, grass fed, the whole 9 yards, right? And this really just comes down to some common sense whenever it comes to eating animal products. You should always make sure that you're getting good sources. And so make sure that you're getting good quality bones. That's going to be the first workaround. The second workaround, let's say that you're not getting good quality bones, which I hope you are. You could also not cook them for as long. So let's say that you're using a pressure cooker. You could just go and cook those not so good quality bones for like 2 hours, and then there's a lesser chance of you releasing the lead from them. And if you're getting good quality bones, then you can pressure cook those for 4 hours because you want all the different nutrients to come out of them. And so utilizing quality bones is the first step. Now, let's say you're somebody who doesn't have bone broth and you don't want to buy it, you don't want to make it, you don't want to deal with it. One of the other workarounds that you can utilize is just simply using a good quality collagen. This is something that I do regularly. I put a scoop of collagen in my coffee in the morning. I actually take collagen and MC and always put that in my tea, in my coffee, or my smoothie that I'm making. And that's how I like to get a lot of these benefits of collagen and the different amino acids out there. And I'll put a link in the description below to the collagen MCT blend that I use every day. So if you're someone who can't use bone broth, we can have that workaround of using a good quality collagen powder. And whenever we look at bone broth, it really comes down to we're improving our digestion, we're reducing inflammation, we're improving our brain health, we're boosting some of those amino acid and collagen intakes, and then we're ultimately going to improve our tendons, ligaments, muscle, and bone health. And therefore, if we can do this, it's going to really have a powerful anti-aging benefit to our entire body. Now, another thing I'm going to do for you is I'm going to look. I believe I have a guide on how to make a really good tasting bone broth. If I do, I'm going to put it in the description below. If I don't have a downloadable guide for you, I know that I did a video at one point with my wife on how to make really good tasty bone broth that you can utilize to improve your health. I'm Dr. Nick Zarowski. Give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and if you enjoyed this video, I think you'll like this one over here next.